When everything we consume is the worst thing ever by some mouth breather on the internet, how is anything truly the worst thing ever? Time for the only podcast to officially create a list of the worst movies ever made. The only one. For real. Worst movies ever.
Worst movies ever. Hello, Worst Movies Ever fans and listeners. Welcome to a new episode. Today, we're going to be talking about a film that, surprisingly, I'm sure to every single person that's listening to this, I was really looking forward to. I wasn't a huge fan of Silent Hill 1 and Silent Hill Revelations, which was part 2, which was actually a retelling of Silent Hill, the video game, part 3, but we'll get into that nonsense when we get into the discussion proper. But this was one of those movies that I was incredibly excited about, only because it was purported to be a retelling and adaptation of perhaps my favorite video game of all time, which is Silent Hill 2. So going into today, I didn't necessarily plan on doing an episode about this movie, mostly because I don't really do a podcast where we sit and cover brand new fucking movies. That's just not my thing. But when I noticed the discourse online, revolving around this movie, it's clear the vast majority of people that went and saw this think this is seriously one of the worst movies ever created. And I wanted to come here today to let the cat out of the bag and say, that's fucking bullshit. Why? You'll find out soon enough. But first, we're going to start off with a voicemail that I got. And obviously, look in the show notes if you want to call and leave a voicemail for the podcast, and give a ring, leave a message, and we'll play it here on the show and we'll talk about it. So here is a voicemail from fellow contributor and executive producer, Vaughn.
Garrett, how are you? Vaughn here. I have to apologize for my associate, Wayne, for calling in, because, you give him a phone number and he will call. Listening to the I Spit on Your Grave remake series, I never watched those films, and I might change my mind now. I have seen the original, and I think it is a classic of a certain era. I'm not a big fan of the rape revenge film, so there's something about that film that just does something to me. No, you know what I mean? It's powerful in a weird way. The sequel, I don't think you brought it up, but Deja Vu, which Ilsa Murney, I can't remember her fucking name, made a couple years ago, I know you're talking about not hating on things, but it is disgustingly ridiculous. And it's terrible. And I don't know, why. I mean, anything else that he's made, have you ever seen Don't Mess With My Sister? Or, and that's pretty much it. It's just those 3 films are kind of terrible in that way that only a guy who's really up his own ass can be. You know what I mean? But yeah, continue doing what you're doing. I will call from time to time. I'm not going to continue apologizing for Wayne. He has his own opinions and feelings, and you'll get them as they go on. But yeah, I'm very happy to hear that this is now the start of season 2. And I hope for many more. All right, buddy. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thanks for calling in, bud. I appreciate that. And per your discussion about I Spit on Your Grave, Deja Vu, which is the direct sequel that I don't reference in my I Spit on Your Grave episode, made by the original director, which is supposed to be, like I said, a direct sequel to the original I Spit on Your Grave. I have seen it, sort of. You are right. It is literally one of the worst things I've ever seen. and I didn't watch the entire thing. I gotta be honest. I remember when it came out, I think you in particular, Wayne, or not Wayne. I'm sorry, I'm breaking kayfabe. Oh my fucking God. Yvonne actually sent me like a poster of it when it came out way back in the day. I think I still have it somewhere here, but I remember when it came out, I watched it or attempted to watch it and only got like 40 minutes into it and said, fuck this nonsense. It's total trash. And not total trash in the way that we were like discussing on that episode where it felt like grossly exploitive towards people that have actually been through sexual assault. It was trash in the way that the direction was awful. None of the actors felt like they were spitting out dialogue human beings would actually spit out. None of the performances felt genuine, and it wasn't even camp. It was just cringe. Like the entire thing is just fucking cringe. So without having to do a full episode on it, and I don't ever plan on going and watching it, so guys don't get excited like all of a sudden we're going to have a huge rant episode about I Spit on Your Grave Deja Vu. It's not going to happen because fuck that movie. If you want to put it on the goddamn list of the worst movies ever, go ahead. I don't give a fuck. It's terrible. It's absolutely fucking awful, and you should avoid it at all costs. So I agree with you, Wayne, and thank you for calling in. Guys, I appreciate anybody that calls in here and wants to give their 2 cents and be on the podcast. So please look in the show notes, call the number, leave me a message, and let me know what your thoughts are on literally anything. And we'll talk about it here on the podcast. But let's go forward into our discussion today in our episode proper concerning Return to Silent Hill, the first Silent Hill movie directed by Christoph Gans. That's been made in 20 years. To say that I am a fan of the Silent Hill series is to really sell it short. And I'm not talking about the movie series because honestly, when the first Silent Hill movie came out way back in 2006, I was rather lukewarm to it. When the original Silent Hill game came out on PlayStation 1 way back in the day, I obsessively played it. I was a huge horror fan, still am a horror fan, even though I don't tend to watch a lot of new horror movies because they don't really do much for me. But Silent Hill was a vibe that was unlike anything else I think I had ever experienced in video game form. It held like the tenets of Resident Evil, the gameplay, I should say, and changed it into something more atmospheric and psychological. And there were with its dream-like score by Akira Yamaoka and the really dark, disturbing shit that was in it, there was nothing like it. And I played it over and over and over again. So when part 2 came out, and I gotta admit, I've actually played through all of the Silent Hill games multiple times on some of them, not so much some of the Western Silent Hill games. Part 2 came out, and it was, even as much as I loved Silent Hill 1, Silent Hill 2 was something that I wasn't prepared for. In video game form, a lot of times, and this was just starting to really rear its head around the era of when that came out in the early 2000s, I think, is when Silent Hill 2 came out. I think like 2001 or something like that. I could be wrong. There weren't a lot of games that really attempted to tell a story in the way that we were accustomed to with cinema. And Silent Hill 2 is one of those games that I feel transcend the medium of video games into the realm of cinema and art. It is a complex narrative concerning trauma, depression, cyclical violence, and shame, spread across a myriad of characters that come in and out of its narrative. And ultimately, its lead that you play as, James Sunderland, who you sympathize with for the vast majority of the film, walks away from that game or doesn't walk away from that game, dependent on how you play the game and the ending that you get or what your perception is, doesn't walk away as a good person, depending on how you look at it. So it was a really complex experience that I, through all of these years now, well over 25, 26 years later, still play. And they made a remake of it in the last 2 years that I feel basically takes the original game and expands on it in ways that not only enhances the experience, but draws you in even more. So Silent Hill 2 is just one of those things that when I heard that Christoph Gans was coming back in order to make Return to Silent Hill, which is a very apt title for this. It's not just a cheesy ass thing where, you know, he's returning to the franchise that he originally directed, the first one. But it also pertains to the idea that Silent Hill is a place that you don't leave, and that maybe Silent Hill is a state of mind, which is something that I feel like in the video games, and sorry if I'm being so dorky about this, but I'm a big gamer. And Silent Hill is one of those franchises that I literally, the moment a new one comes out, I play it. Not just once, but multiple times. Because these games are games that are so full of metaphor, symbolism, and subtext that it takes a few times in order to really grasp at what they're attempting to accomplish narratively. I mean, outside of the fact they're filled with completely grotesque monsters, a completely vibey soundtrack, and horrific environment, they are just a vibe that I look forward to experiencing every time they bring something out. So Return to Silent Hill. I'm going to try my best while we're talking about this to not just go on and on about the video game and comparisons, but it's going to be impossible to me as somebody that's played Silent Hill 2 obsessively for over 20 years and feel like I have a firm grasp on what the narrative and some of the subtext is behind what's going on in that game. But this version of Silent Hill concerns a man named James Sunderland, who's an artist who is on his own, but absolutely struggling to get past the death of his girlfriend, who he left. In the movie, it's not really, they say she dies 2 months or 3 months before the movie starts. But he left because she was tied to a religious cult that was going on in Silent Hill. As if you remember from the original movie, there's this religious cult that has opened a gateway to hell, basically, and has taken over this town. And they were doing this in hopes that they would resurrect this entity, which obviously was like a demon, that would bring them to paradise. And of course, paradise isn't what they thought it was. And in sacrificing this little girl, Alyssa Gillespie, they actually resurrected the most venomous demon and opened a portal to a netherworld of nightmares and demons. And in this movie, James's girlfriend, Mary, grew up in this cult, and he found out and could not handle it anymore, so he left her. And after he left her, she dies under mysterious circumstances, and James cannot let go. One day, suddenly, James receives a letter from her and decides to return back to Silent Hill where they lived in order to find her. As expected, nothing good happens from going to Silent Hill. So they took a lot of liberties with the original source material and changed a bunch of it. In the original game, James is actually, it's a very slow drip kind of narrative that you don't really find out until about halfway through the game. And then the last quarter of the game, all of the secrets become revealed as to why James is actually there. But in the game itself, James receives a letter from his wife, Mary, who died of cancer. And he's there believing, he goes back and believes that he's going to find her. And he misses her intensely. In the game itself, you walk through these environments in the dreamy world of Silent Hill, meeting a myriad of characters that all have their own trauma and their own journeys that they're going through. And James slowly starts to realize that maybe Silent Hill isn't what he thought it was, and maybe he's not who he thought he was. So the way that they sat and took this original it's not a simple narrative, but it's told in a fairly straightforward kind of way where as you go along in it, new elements drip in and the overall story becomes clear. This Return to Silent Hill takes things in a completely different direction, mashes characters together, presents an entire flashback backstory that changes the overall narrative of what Silent Hill 2 was and becomes its own thing. And I think that's like a big thing and a big hurdle for those of us that are so familiar with the original source material. It's a huge thing to have to let go of. And I think anybody that watches adaptations of anything, and I'm going to just point to the easiest culprit, and that's Stephen King's adaptations, which are never one-to-one recreations of what were on paper in any way. I think you have to allow adaptations to be their own thing. And if you can't get past that, of course, you are going to rebel against whatever you see. And the verdict I have for today for Return to Silent Hill, and I already kind of let you know this, but even though this is a wildly different narrative from the source material in overtly superficial ways, the overall vibe and thematic elements that make Silent Hill 2 special are done in a way that completely respects the source material. And I think there's going to be some people that may click on this episode and feel completely the opposite. You're entitled to feel that way. I am not foreign to the game. If it hasn't been readily apparent up until this point in this monologue, I've played this game a ton. I'm very familiar with it. I'm very familiar with my feelings and my thoughts, regardless of any exterior, analysis or whatever you have. Art to me is something that you interpret, that you internalize, and that you sit and take something from and walk away from. So in a lot of ways, fanboys and fangirls that want to dictate to you what something is and what's the truth behind something, that I'm not a person that sticks straight to, well, this is absolutely what this means, blah, 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 blah. Take from it what you want. And it's not going to be, in my opinion, it's not going to be a popular one at all. And I'm sure a lot of people will tell me that I'm wrong. But as a longtime fan and player of Silent Hill 2, since its original release on PlayStation 2, I walked away liking this movie, regardless of its deviations and and we're going to talk about this, some of the cheapness of some of its aspects. I think Return to Silent Hill, when I let go of it being like a one-to-one recreation of Silent Hill 2, the video game, which it absolutely is not, I got choked up at some points, the way that I get choked up in Silent Hill 2 when I play the game. You don't play that game to have good times. It's something that challenges you as a person and challenges our perception as to what's right and what's wrong in a way that I feel most art doesn't tap into. It feels a bit overstated and overdone, but that's how good I think Silent Hill 2 is. So let's get to the good, the bads, and the what the fucks.
What is good?
My first good is its visuals, as you would expect, having seen other Christoph Gans movies. Like the original Silent Hill film was gorgeous and horrific all at once. And Brotherhood of the Wolf, if you've never seen that movie, goddamn, I need to revisit Brotherhood of the Wolf. Such a good fucking movie. Beautiful film. Just shot gorgeously. And of course, the Silent Hill sequences and the monsters that are mostly all practical outside of some CG stuff. There are just some images that flat out, your jaw's gonna hit the floor in this movie. There are some things that look cheap because of the CGI, and some of the CGI is a little spotty, given the fact that we're in 2026. But I also feel like this wasn't as high a budget. So accomplishing what they accomplished on the budget that they had and the scale that they went for, fucking astounding to me. There's so many wildly interesting images in this movie. And it's going to be hard for me to talk about this movie without spoiling it somewhat. But there's a constant image that goes through the second half of this film of Mary, who is like this moth demon bedridden like spider monster in this almost. That is so fucking amazing. Like every time that it came up, I was just like, wow, that is cool. And I gotta say, I walked away completely satisfied with the visuals of this movie. The soundtrack, which you can't talk about Silent Hill without talking about Akira Yamaoka. The guy who made, if you were going to liken him to anybody in the cinema realm, Angelo Badalamenti, the guy who made most of David Lynch's scores. I probably slaughtered his name, but oh well, you know who I'm talking about. The Twin Peaks score is probably his most iconic. I would liken Akira Yamaoka's stuff in Silent Hill very much akin to Twin Peaks, which obviously, and I got this right off the bat the first time I ever played Silent Hill 1, Twin Peaks is firmly entrenched in Silent Hill. There's no doubt. Absolutely no doubt. And they've come out and said that David Lynch was a huge inspiration for a lot of the vibe of what Silent Hill 2 is. But the score for Silent Hill 2, which is probably one of my favorite soundtracks of all time. I listen to it all the time outside of playing the game. Listener Mark sent me the vinyl collection from Mondo last year, and I listened to that quite a bit. It's so fucking good. This score for Return to Silent Hill isn't that score, and I'm rather surprised by it. I was really surprised by it because the first Silent Hill game, they took direct songs basically from Silent Hill 1 and plunked them into the movie, which gave that first movie, for fans of it, a lot of grounding in a way that it felt like Silent Hill because of that score. This movie doesn't do that. Akira Yamaoka actually creates an entirely new score, which was weird and off-putting, and I'm sure a lot of fans were kind of taken aside like, where is this iconic score for this film. It's there, but subtly, very subtly. And not until the ending and the last part of this movie does the actual score for the original game come in. And I gotta say, I'm kind of cool with that. As much as I loved the original Silent Hill 2 score, this is its own thing. And I think through and through, it speaks towards what Christoph Gans was going for, was his own interpretation of this thing. He didn't want to just recreate Silent Hill 2. And with that, I'm sure he directed Akira Yamaoka to do the same thing. Let the piece speak for itself and do your own thing. And I fucking loved it. I really loved it. Another good, the overall tone of this movie is much different than, I would say, the original Silent Hill movie. If that's your point of reference in all of the video game talk that I'm like spewing out to you guys, like goes straight over your head, like you've never experienced any of that, and the only thing you've experienced are the two other Silent Hill movies. The overall tone of this one, especially compared to fucking Revelations, which I revisited this last October, and I gotta say, it's not as bad as I remember it being. It's not great, but it as a fan of the games and what they attempted to do, I appreciated it, I think, a little bit more than most people would. So this movie, the original Silent Hill 2 isn't just a straight up horror title. It is a horror game, but its vibe and its overall, like, the telling of the narrative and the glacial pace of what happens in that game, it isn't straight up just strictly horror. It's pretty drama based, like a lot of it. And this movie also follows that route in a way that it's a slow burn kind of movie. It's not just a straight up horror title. It's concerned with far other things than just horror. It becomes pretty overtly horror at points, but it's mostly a vibe. There's horror in it, for sure, but it's more concerned with the themes of internal torment, guilt, trauma, shame, and depression. It's a really heady, complex piece, and while it takes those themes and simplifies them to a shorter runtime, because the original game it's like 8 to 10 hours long. And the remake of it is even longer. I think it took me like 13, 14 hours to finish that thing. And so to take all of that and condense it, obviously there's going to be some compromises to it. But even having said that, the tone of this one, it just, to me, one, I wish it was a little bit longer, honestly, and that might be one of the bads, is that I just feel like some of it was kind of rushed through a little bit, but it really takes its time to set up the world and the vibe and walk us through this new story of Silent Hill 2. And I honestly think it focuses really on the right things, that idea that trauma is cyclical and that none of us are just good or just bad, that until you sit down and process and work through whatever trauma that you have, whatever depression that you have, whatever internal struggle that you have in life, and you work through it, it'll consume you until you get to a point that you will never escape it, that it'll walk around with you like a cough pyramid head. Yeah. Let's get straight to Pyramid Head in this movie. And again, I apologize for being a dork, but the other Silent Hill movies did a great disservice to the character of Pyramid Head because he did not belong in them. In the Silent Hill game universe, the monsters that are in the games are personal to the protagonist of the game. So there aren't just universal things that keep popping up over and over and over again. Whatever world that you're in that particular Silent Hill game, those monsters are specific to the protagonist and the world that you're in. So to see Pyramid Head propagate through these other films, I remember when I first saw those movies, I was just like, fuck this. What the fuck? It was obvious that they needed a boogeyman and they wanted your typical Pinhead, Jason, Freddy boogeyman for the series. And undercut the entire point of what Pyramid Head really was. And to see him show up in Return to Silent Hill and be exactly who he was supposed to be, god damn, that felt good. It made me literally forget that there were any other Silent Hill movies and feel like they finally got it right. Which I think a lot of people would probably fight me on. But Pyramid Head is very specific to Silent Hill 2. His inclusion in other films were just fucking bullshit and shouldn't have been there. They correct the wrong here and give him the context he was always supposed to have. Spoilers!
This is a warning. Thank you.
Being James' metaphorical anger and guilt, punishing him for the horrible things that he did. If you've played the game, you know that while there are encounters with Pyramid Head, he's not really out to kill you per se. He's out to punish you and out to remind you that guess what? You still have a lot to fucking work through. And it was so good to see him here in this movie, along with the rest of the fucking monsters in this. There's one particular monster we'll talk about in the bads, but I gotta admit, seeing it in this movie in like a practical apparatus was even grosser than it was in the fucking games. Ugh. The monsters all were fucking amazing. We're all fucking amazing. And if you've seen Silent Hill, the first movie, all the cockroaches with little faces are in this again. The nurses, which again are very specific. The nurses that we've seen so far are very specific to Silent Hill 2. And I think a lot of the iconography of the other movies mostly were very specific to Silent Hill 2. Yes, there are nurses in almost every single Silent Hill game, but they're different to that world. And the nurses in Silent Hill 2 look a very specific way because of James. And I'm not going to go, I'm sorry, I feel so bad. I'm just like being such a dork about this. But there's a narrative in the game where James, his wife Mary, who has been suffering from cancer for years, and he's been her caretaker and their relationship due to years of having to go through this horrible disease and the degradation of her body and her spirit has taken a toll on not only Mary, obviously, but also James as not just a person, but a husband. And he's had to push himself to the back burner. And some things that were important to him have now begun to fester. And he misses not only his wife, but he also misses a sexual relationship with her. And a lot of the things that you see within the world of Silent Hill 2 are overtly sexualized. These monsters, overtly sexualized in a way that speaks towards James' yearning for something more than he has. And these nurses that are in these skimpy little outfits are taunting him In the same way, there's other monsters in the game that are taunting him. And in this world, to see the nurses in this, again, this really, like the iconography, a lot of the shit that was in the first couple movies finally feels right here. And it deserves to be here, even though it's not really spoken towards. And this is something I'm going to talk about in the bad, is that even though the iconography is here, they've changed it for this telling of the story. And a lot of things I was just talking about with the game don't directly relate to this movie. And maybe I'm doing a disservice to like even speak about this movie because I have such history with the game that a lot of what I'm bringing into this is my experience of playing that narrative, and seeing these things brought in reminded me of other things. And maybe that's wrong when you're trying to give this thing its own space, because this version of James is far different. Not only is he just not some general schmo, he's an artist who lives in your typical. Remember when I was talking about Alone in the Dark, and why does Edward Carnby live in this huge fucking warehouse mansion? James kind of has a similar, stereotypical studio apartment place that he does his painting in and whatnot. But James is a far different beast in this. But at the same time, the monsters and the things that are going on in this version of Silent Hill are tied to the internal struggle of our protagonist. And it was really nice to see that they actually tried to bring that symbolism in, even if it was subtle. And I like I said, I want to see a director's cut to see if they flesh this out a little bit more. But the intended placement and use for these monsters is there and was there. So I completely fucking appreciated that. There was, as I had said before, there was an introduction to the narrative, which isn't there in the source material, of a lot of flashbacks and history building between James and Mary that just plain and simple was not there in the original game. And honestly, for a film, I understood why they did it. I wish the actors were a little stronger because some of it feels a little stilted. But if you get past that point, I really liked the narrative that they were building and trying to tie into the other movies with the cult and all this stuff. Obviously, you have to let go that this isn't going to be what Silent Hill 2 is, because Silent Hill 2 is its own thing. It's called Silent Hill and it takes place in Silent Hill, but it doesn't tie into the narrative that Silent Hill 1 and 3 have, because Silent Hill 1 and 3 are literally direct sequels to each other. Like Silent Hill happens and Silent Hill 3 is the direct sequel of that narrative. And Silent Hill 2 is its own kind of little island where it tells its own story and does its own thing. So the flashbacks in their attempt in very subtle, I mean, I guess you could argue it's not overtly subtle, but in its own way to try and tie into the cult aspect of the town and what had gone on without directly referencing Alyssa Gillespie and, all of the crazy shit that happened in the first movie, which I don't know if it's like a licensing thing that they couldn't really use any of that footage or whatever. But I appreciated that. And it felt like it resided, this little island of a film resided somewhere in that series. And I kind of thought that was cool. Toward the end of the movie, when our protagonist starts to realize that really Silent Hill is a metaphor for the psychosis and internal workings of somebody that is processing trauma. There is a sequence where he's walking down a hallway of his paintings where the paintings slowly are showing the degradation of the mental state and the health of his girlfriend, Mary. And in the game, it was done through a videotape that kind of led on to the backstory and what was actually going on. Here, I thought that was such a wonderful way. And it's a really kind of powerful sequence in this movie. I really enjoyed that. Not only were the paintings beautiful, but it showed that this movie wasn't just trying to be superficial face value kind of shit the way the first Silent Hill movie was. That was when I walked away from the original Silent Hill film, I walked away thinking, man, all of the subtext is gone. And this is just trying to be like a roller coaster horror movie, which, I mean, it's a fine movie. Like, I rewatched part 1 and 2 of the series for October, as I had said. And I walked away like, you know what? They're fun. They're fun movies, and they have cool aspects to them. They aren't the games, nor are they trying to be, even though they take, narrative ticks from the games and iconography from the games. They are trying to do their own thing. Where here, this feels like it was informed by Silent Hill 2 in a way that I completely appreciated. And this hallway sequence in particular, and the build up to the climax, man, it brought it all home for me. And I couldn't appreciate it more. Now, this is where I'm probably going to lose the vast majority of people, because I had a discussion with Mark the Movie Man, and I think we're going to be doing an episode of his podcast for his Patreon coming up about this movie in particular. He wanted to talk me through it because we had a discussion about this after I got out of the movie. The ending. And I'm going to put up spoilers, and you might want to skip ahead about 5 minutes because I'm going to talk about the ending of this movie.
This is a warning. Thank you.
So the ending of this movie, you could perceive as being a happy ending. There's an ending which was a direct ending in the original game where he takes the body of Mary that he finds and then drives into Toluca Lake and drowns. Having seen that he's the one who actually killed Mary, as she asked him to, but he didn't just do it for, to end her suffering, even though in the movie it kind of seems that way. But that's not what happens in the game. And what most of the guilt and trauma is tied around this act. In the movie, we then wake up back at the beginning of the movie where James and Mary meet each other and they drive away from Silent Hill. And I think the overall perception of this is that it's a happy ending. I've always been of the mind, and there's a lot of people out there that would probably fight me on this, but the remake of Silent Hill 2 also brings this aspect of a time loop into the series and into this game where James has been here before. He's never left Silent Hill. His brain is stuck there. And no matter how happy he may walk away from his journey through the depths and darkness of his mind, he will always go back to Silent Hill. So the ending of the movie, which is this happy ending where they drive away, to me, being somebody who's played the games, is not a happy ending. Because we know he has not fully processed what he's been through, and that ultimately he will be back in Silent Hill. And he will go through this again and again and again. So I don't look at it as a happy ending. It looks like a respite. But, and again, I think Silent Hill dorks will fight me on this. as any fandom tends to do. But I'm a believer in the time loop theory of Silent Hill. Because I think with New Game Plus and all this other stuff, it is one of these things where we keep replaying this journey centered around internal trauma and psychosis. And he will be back. So it ends as it begins because we're in a cycle of trauma. So he will relive Silent Hill and its hell over and over and over and over again. So to see the ending of this film as a happy ending, I think is a red herring. But as with all art, and as I had said before, you can take it however the fuck you want to take it, man. That's cool with me. Let's get to the bads.
What is bad?
The casting of this movie feels awkward, and I can see why a lot of people get up in arms about this movie based on the casting alone. Nobody looks the way that they do in the game. Let go of it. It is what it is. I just don't think, other than James and maybe the child actress who plays Laura, who actually, funny enough, they came out that Christoph Gans casted her not knowing she actually played Laura in the remake. But she also does a really good job in this movie as well. A lot of the actors, just like, it feels really stiff and kind of wooden in a lot of ways. And I just, the overall costuming felt cheap, especially the wigs. Oh my fucking God, the wigs in this fucking movie. There's a sequence where James is supposed to be like, disheveled and has left Silent Hill and finds out that Mary is sick. And he has, and I am not lying, the shittiest fake fucking beard you've seen in a movie in some time. It is so fucking awful. And we haven't even talked about some of the characters in this movie because I kind of want to leave some of it up to you to find out if you decide to watch this thing. But there's a character named Maria in this movie who is kind of not just his friend, but also a temptress to James. And they attempt to make her look like Maria in the game, but they just, because it's played by the same actress that plays Mary, it's just a shitty blonde wig. And it's not even a good shitty blonde wig. It looks fucking cheap. She also plays a third character named Angela, which is a bad I'm going to talk about coming up here, who's in an even shittier wig. So overall, it just like a lot of the decisions with the casting and maybe the costuming and makeup just kind of are like head scratchers. But I looked past all that shit. Let's get to the changes in this compared to the source material. They take 4 characters, 2 of which in the original game were actually the same person, and that's Mary and Maria. Spoilers. But then there's another character named Angela, and then a little girl named Laura. And for some reason, they decided to strip the backstories away from Angela and Laura and make them directly tied to Mary and mash all those characters into one person, which changes a lot of the metaphor and the actual iconography within Silent Hill 2 in such a drastic way that they can't be looked at the same anymore. But having said that, within the world of this movie, directly, in I thought rather ingeniously, kind of spoke towards different aspects of Mary's life within the cult. And I thought, you know what? I at first, while I was watching it and it was going past me, as a fan of the game, I was like, oh, fuck, what are they doing? But as it wrapped itself up, I thought it was kind of ingenious what they did. And in very indirect ways, took some of the metaphor of those characters, especially the Angela character, which has the most tragic fucking backstory in the game, and brought it to the Mary character in a way that felt satisfying to me if you sat and allowed yourself to jump into this world. So, man, it's going to be hard for those of you out there that are fans of the game to like jump into this and not be completely repulsed by the fact that they've changed these characters. And I'm not even talking about the only what the fuck that I have, and we'll get to that, which is one character that shows up in this for no reason. Because it has nothing to do with what's going on in this world whatsoever. But this Angela character that I was talking about, who has like the most tragic backstory of this, is in the game somebody who has suffered, and a trigger warning here. Silent Hill 2 doesn't shy away from real darkness in its narrative. And in the game, Angela is somebody who was sexually abused by their father and is in Silent Hill because they murdered him, and she murdered her mother for not believing her about it. So she's stuck in this world of Silent Hill because of her guilt for doing this, but also the pain that she's endured because she's now in her own personal hell due to this. And her her pyramid head is this monster called the Abstract Daddy that shows up in not only in the game, but also shows up here in the movie when James goes into this pulsing flesh room with pistons going in and out, and this monster that is basically a bed frame with legs and Mary or Angela laying on her back with this pulsating, humping form on top of her. It's fucking repulsive. And in the game, it's so disturbing. And to see it here in this, oh my God. What they did with it was so fucking gross. But for my tastes, even though they did tie it into the Mary character and made its inclusion worthwhile, the ultimate power of that image and its meaning within the world is drastically, and I mean drastically diminished. So why it was there, I don't know. I get like a lot of the things that happen in this movie feel like they had a checklist of things that they had to get through in order to get to the end that were in the game. But this one in particular kind of just they tied it in well enough that I wasn't completely fucking like repulsed by its inclusion, but they also kind of fumbled it by mashing the Angela character into this Mary character a little bit. And my last bad of this is that I just feel like it needed to be longer. The movie in general just needed more time to flesh out this world and flesh out the metaphor that they were going for. And I'm hoping that there's a director's cut that we ultimately get of this. Now let's get to the what the fuck.
What the fuck is that?
My only what the fuck of this movie, and I'm sure a lot of people out there that's seen this movie would probably be like, the entire movie is what the fuck. What are you talking about? Because it is a very surreal movie, and it takes you having to surrender to its world to be able to take the ride with it. It's not a direct narrative. It jumps all over. It's not linear, and a lot of it pertains to metaphor. So if you're not along with that ride, I'm sure a lot of it's going to be, what the fuck is this? But this is purely dork shit. There is a character in this movie that's in the original movie named Eddie. In the game, he has a rather huge part, and you fight him at some point. In the movie, he's literally in one scene for no fucking reason, and he's just so awful that if it were up to me, and I don't know how you would edit him out, I would cut him completely out of this fucking movie. There's no reason. What the fuck is he doing there? He served no purpose other than, hey, you remember this? That's it. And that's the kind of shit to me. And I think at this point, you guys should be well aware of this with anything. If you're just like doing fan service, just fucking cut that shit out. Unless it's an Easter egg that's super subtle, just cut that shit out. Tell your narrative and make it make sense within that narrative. And that's my only what the fuck. And that's what I had to say about Return to Silent Hill. It's messy. It's not perfect. But overall, I feel like it stuck the landing by the end of the movie of getting the overall general point of what Silent Hill 2 was. It's not Silent Hill 2. It's its own thing that's living in the world of the Silent Hill film franchise. And I gotta say, I'm gonna watch it again. I'm looking forward to it being released. And again, I've said this 3 times now at this point. I hope that it's director's cut. I know Christoph Gans has kind of like alluded to the fact that there's going to be one. So that's my only hope. And I dug it. I think if you're on the fence and you have an open mind and could just like let this movie be what it's going to be for good and bad, I think you're going to walk away enjoying this. Again, as I've always said, don't let the internet hive mind dictate what your feelings on anything are. Walk into things, even if they are something you hold so dear to your heart, as I do with Silent Hill 2. Let things be what they are. Return to Silent Hill does not erase the video games of Silent Hill 2. And if I want to experience those things, I can boot them up on my PlayStation anytime I want to. This is its own thing within the franchise, and I'm glad it exists. I'm glad they attempted to do this, and I'm glad that I walked away feeling like the vibe was there and that they kind of got what the point of Silent Hill 2 was. So that for me, damn, very happy, very happy. So anyways, next episode of Worst Movies Ever, we're going to be a fellow of like friend and listener of the podcast, supporter of the podcast, sent me an Arrow Blu-ray of the Empire film Arena. That's what we're going to be talking about next episode of Worst Movies Ever. So thank you for listening to this long, rambly, I'm sure incoherent, geek fucking like vomit of an episode. But I felt like I needed to talk about this, and I wanted to talk about this because there's not many people out there that are actually giving any shine to this movie. This is the new fucking Plan 9, is fucking Return to Silent Hill, and I think it's bullshit. Celebrate trash at all costs and love what you love and whip the bird at anybody else that wants to tell you you're wrong about something that you love. So, fuck all you haters. I like Return to Silent Hill. Later, folks.
Worst Movies Ever podcast is executive produced by Vaughn Kuhlmeyer and Shannon Smith. For more Worst Movies Ever and to make the Doctor watch your worst movies ever, subscribe to the Worst Movies Ever Patreon at patreon.com/Worst Movies Ever. There you will get a monthly exclusive WME podcast plucked from the user-generated film list, randomized episode to episode. Until next time, celebrate trash at all costs. Toodles.